mind that is the big pivotal part in whether and how we love God. It makes possible the biggest transformation that we can talk about. We can talk about other things that are involved in loving God, but it's our mind, and whether our mind is working straight, whether we're thinking straight or not, whether we're making sense of things the way God intends. That just has so much to do with whether we are pleasing God or not, or on the way to pleasing God. So I thought it would be good to make a list of all the things the mind makes possible, what it does. If I were to ask you to just start thinking, that's an obvious one. What would be some other things that that the mind makes possible, that the mind does for us? Do things pop into your mind right away? I've got a list under here, but I'd rather use your...
Controls what we do.
It what?
Controls.
It controls. Mm-hmm. What else?
Desires.
It determines desires. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me prime the pump a little here. No, I don't have it. I didn't give it here. Just a minute here. Okay, here's what the mind does. It reasons. Wouldn't you say it gives? It's the way you reason out what is right or what is legal or what is best. It reasons. So I'll give you these. There's lots more. So I want you to add if you think of some I've left out. It's the way we understand. When the Bible, when the New Testament talks about, and God gives us understanding of His will, that's the mind at work. It gives us discernment, choosing, seeing the difference between right and wrong, or the best and the better. The good, better, and best. It makes those kinds of distinctions. And this one we're going to come back to later. The mind is the way we connect with each other. It is the way I check out what I find the will of God is meaning for me with you, to see if that's the way you understand too. It's the way I explain myself and you explain yourself. It's the way I communicate. It's the way I interpret. You could almost say translate. The way I translate what the language God is using for me, and you see if it's the language He's using for you. I've stressed these because the mind is what enables us to be the church. The mind is what makes it possible for us to communicate with each other. Mm-hmm. And that is so important. Otherwise, if we just had emotions, I would just be lost. I would be lost in my enjoyment of God, and you'd be lost in yours, and we wouldn't even know each other, because we couldn't explain it to each other. It's our mind that makes it, this is the way it makes sense to me. And you say, yeah, but shouldn't you also add this? And this is the way we connect. I really stress that because there's so much Lone Rangerness in the church these days. The mind is what helps us guard against that. And another one, that we recognize the truth with our mind, that we make sense of things, as I said. Mind is what makes scientific discovery possible, which has given us so much control, at least of the physical world, and helps us to make judgments, and it allows us to analyze. Now that's priming the pump. What would you add? The mind. What Pastor Bob? Memory allows us to remember and learn from memory. Yeah, good.
I think actually your mind
I
controls
was
everything,
thinking
your emotions.
the things that went on this week on television, where they signed that thing in for women marrying women and men marrying men, and the kids see this. What are we going to tell these kids? Are we going to tell them that's right? Or are we supposed to tell them what we think is not right?
And if I can just write on that, and I won't try to answer your question at this point. We may get back to something like that. But it's with your mind, Louise, that you're trying to assess that. And that if you want to talk to someone else about it, so that you're seeing, do they feel this way? In fact, you asked it as a question. Is this what you should do? That's the way you're doing it. You're appealing to my mind, how I understand that, your mind. It's so important to us all that we use our mind to figure out God's will and know what is best. And I heard you say something I want to get back to.
I think that your mind controls everything. It controls your emotions and your whole aspect that you're being. It's what makes you better.
Yeah, it's very hard not to see the mind as the most important thing, the most important thing of all. But
I get love and everything from that, because you don't really have, you talk about your heart being love, whatever,
Right.
but it still all comes from your mind.
even love, it's got to be, the mind enters into it, or it's just love that's just, you might say, human love that doesn't go any further than exchanging favors or something like that. Yeah, the mind. I just wanted to say here, though, there are people who would say, no, if you make it all mind, then you just make a head trip out of Christianity, and if you don't get the heart in there, it leaves something out. So you can't say it's all mind, but believe me, it's really an important part of us. It's just so important to us. Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like sometimes to me it's like your mind can be your most unstable of all of those, just because if you're something that's deep in your heart usually doesn't change. Your physical body and your emotions are relatively the same, but whatever's in your mind, if sometimes you can really believe something, and if somebody puts a little something in there to make you doubt that can alter a lot of what you have in your mind. If you don't have, if you're a little bit weak in something, sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot to really persuade you to lose a lot of what you really believe.
I'm glad you're reminding us of that, because the mind has to, the scripture says the mind needs to be renewed, that we're transformed by the renewing of the mind, because we can't just trust the mind on its own. The mind can be mistaught. It can have influences in it that make it not care about this or that, which twists things. So if the mind is renewed, though, then it is very, very important, and it can guide us in knowing what God's will is. I'm sorry, my notes here are just scribbled, but I tell you, folks, this was so important I couldn't stop writing. Just a minute now. This microphone you've given me gives me only one hand to use here. Just a minute. Okay. This I wanted to get in here. It is the way these things combine and work together that is such a wonderful part of the way God made each of us so different. So that none of us quite puts the same combination in that as someone else does. Even in the church, we don't do it exactly the same. We don't think exactly the same, or practice our emotions exactly the same. I have the same emotional intensity. We're different, and that's okay. That's God's will. But it's where that is brought under God's under control of the Spirit, that then it can work for good rather than bad. I guess that's what I want to say. So now I'm going to ask you now, because just to say a little bit about how you and maybe different from most anybody else in this room. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? Now that's a way I dare say we could divide up the room 50-50, and maybe it would be more like 60-40 or 70-30. Just think for a minute. Introvert is a person who can be sociable and enjoy being with people, but they can hardly wait till they can be by themselves again. They can't be with people all the time, or it just drains them. It just exhausts them. Now, I'm that kind of a person. I got to tell you, I'm an introvert. I love being around people, but tonight I'll be glad to get home again and be by myself and by my wife. My wife is here tonight. May I just introduce her at this moment? So I'm really being careful with what I say tonight. But an extrovert is where I imagine more of you are, and yet I could be wrong. An extrovert is the person who just, their juices get flowing when they're with people. They like parties. They like groups. They like gathering with others. They like talking on the telephone. Anything that connects, and then they can really come alive. Now, I'm not going to ask you to say who you are, but just think for a moment. Just think for the moment. That's the way God made you. That's who you are, and that's okay. That's really okay. It's then what you do with that is the important thing. And whether you were to, if I were to let introversion make me pull away from all connections, be away from everybody, or if I always was with people so much that I never allowed God to speak to me, those are extremes. Now, here's another set of things that go, these three more or less go together. And I don't even have them all on here. Some of you may recognize the Myers-Briggs temperament indicator there. But they use questions like this just to show, and what's exciting about it is to realize, hey, I'm not like everybody else, and yet I'm not off my rocker. I'm okay. So I wanted to put the questions to you. Are you a reasoning or an intuitive person? Now this is going to come back around to how God will then guide you in using your mind. If you're a reasoning person, you come at truth. You decide if something being said to you is true or not because it makes sense. Yeah, that's reasonable. Okay. And so everything you hear on TV or advertising or anything, it all has to make some sense to you. You're not just going to be carried along with it. But if you're an intuitive person, you instantly, yeah, that's right. I know that. And maybe this one is a little more like this. You think your way. To what truth is, or do you feel your way to it? It makes you happy. It makes you almost jump up and down. Not literally necessarily, but it gives you a good feeling. That's the way you know you should take something seriously, because it just sounds so good to you that way. Whereas if you're a thinking person, it has to be reasonable. It has to make sense. And here again, there is no right or wrong on these. These are God made us differently, and I'm just going to try to say to you that it's whichever side of this you fall on. Then that the way that this scripture then it will give you the most help. The other one is judging or sensing, where you make judgments. For instance, intellectually, you think it through. You think it that way, or I just know in my heart. Let me give you a couple tests here, because we have this in our church services. Our church services can be either more one way or the other. If you always and only sing, "You ask me how I know He lives within my heart," which are you?
This side. The right side.
Shannon, you're saying this side over here. Truth comes to you through feeling it. Yeah. And I would say in the Church of God, we have far more songs that do this, that talk about, because we're that kind of a church. Not entirely, but we're a church where Christian experience makes you a member. And experience is, I feel it. I had it happen to me, you see. But we also have some people who, I don't know, a good example here. We don't have as many songs of this sort, but Spirit of God, descend upon my heart. Wean it from earth, through all its pulses move. Stoop to my weakness, mighty as thou art, and make me love you as I ought to love. Now, you already know which side I'm putting that on, so I won't ask you. I see that as more of a reasonable song, a song that in which I'm using my mind to try to sing that. And I just want to make it clear. It's not that there's one right kind of a song and one wrong kind of a song. It's that depending on which you are, then that's where you need to use your mind in a still stronger way. If you are a feeling person, then it's very important that you get to a point where you say, I start toward truth by feeling it, but I'd better get to where I understand it also, and where I'm using my mind with it, or it's all well and good to talk to other Christians. You ask me how I know He lives within my heart, but you tell a Muslim that. You won't necessarily convince a Muslim or a very secular friend who finds religion full of a lot of bogus or something. And for you to say He lives within my heart, they could just turn to you, well, that's why you are misguided like you are, or something like that. They would turn that off. Whereas so you need to push beyond just feeling, so that you know why you believe what you believe. You use your mind for that. You must do that. And the mind person And I can say that because I tend to be more this side. The mind person, it needs. Do you ever? Are you capable of feeling